The gunshot echoed across the rolling plains of Wyoming Territory, 1876, a haunting sound that startled Zara Lockhart from her task of drawing water from the old stone well on her family's homestead. Her hands froze on the rope as she peered into the distance, catching sight of something. Someone slumped against the rocky outcropping near the cottonwood trees. Blood stained the dusty earth beneath him, a dark crimson against the parched soil of Monticello. Zara dropped the bucket, the splash of water against stone barely registering as she gathered her skirts and ran. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, casting long shadows across the land as she approached the fallen figure. A man, broad-shouldered and dressed in trail-worn clothing, lay motionless beside her family's property boundary. A cowboy, by the look of his attire, leather chaps, dusty boots with spurs, and a once white shirt now stained red with blood. "Sir." Zara called, her voice trembling as she approached cautiously. "Can you hear me?" the man groaned, his eyelids fluttering open to reveal startling blue eyes clouded with pain. A handsome face, despite being smudged with dirt and blood, with several days' growth of beard shadowing his strong jaw. His hat lay a few feet away, revealing dark hair streaked with dust. "Don't move," he managed to say, his voice a hoarse whisper. "They might still be watching." Zara glanced nervously at the surrounding landscape, seeing nothing but the swaying prairie grass and distant mountains. Who did this to you?" The man tried to sit up, grimacing as pain lanced through him. "Name's Patrick Porter," he said through gritted teeth. "Trail boss, cattle drive, ambushed." "Don't try to move, Mr. Porter," Zara instructed, kneeling beside him and examining his wounds. A bullet had torn through his left shoulder and another had grazed his side. His right leg was bent at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. "I'm Zara Lockhart. This is my family's homestead." Patrick's eyes cleared briefly as they focused on her face. "Pretty name." "For a pretty lady," he managed before his head fell back against the ground. Zara assessed the situation quickly. The man would die out here without help, but she couldn't carry him back to the house alone. Her father and brothers were in town getting supplies and wouldn't return until evening. She made a split-second decision. "I'm going to get my wagon. Don't move and try to stay awake," she instructed firmly. Patrick grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "Careful, they took everything." Who took everything?" Zara asked. "Russell's gang," he whispered before losing consciousness again. Zara's blood ran cold. The Russell gang had been terrorizing the area for months, rustling cattle and robbing stagecoaches. If they had attacked this man's cattle drive, they might still be nearby. Gathering her courage, Zara raced back to the homestead, hitched their old mare to the wagon, and loaded it with blankets, water, and her father's medical supplies. Her mother had been a nurse during the war and had passed on her knowledge to Zara before succumbing to fever 3 winters past. When she returned, Patrick was still unconscious but breathing. With considerable effort and determination, Zara managed to get him into the wagon, using all her strength to lift his muscular frame. She fashioned a quick splint for his leg using branches and strips of cloth, and bound his shoulder wound tightly to stanch the bleeding. The journey back to the homestead was slow and arduous. Every jolt of the wagon over the uneven ground elicited a groan from Patrick, even in his unconscious state. Zara kept glancing over her shoulder, afraid that Russell's gang might appear on the horizon at any moment. By the time she reached the cabin, sweat soaked her blouse and her arms trembled with exertion. Getting Patrick inside proved even more difficult than loading him into the wagon had been. Despite his injuries, he was a tall man, well over 6 feet, with the solid build of someone who spent his days in the saddle through sheer determination. Zara managed to drag him inside and onto her father's bed. She worked quickly, cutting away his bloodied shirt to reveal a well-muscled torso marked with old scars and fresh wounds. The bullet in his shoulder would need to be removed and his leg properly set. Zara sterilized her mother's old surgical tools in boiling water and gathered clean bandages. Patrick stirred as she prepared to extract the bullet. "This will hurt," she warned him, pressing a piece of leather between his teeth. but I can't leave that bullet in you." His blue eyes fixed on hers, clarity returning briefly. "Do what? You must," he managed before biting down on the leather. Zara's hands, usually steady when treating injuries, trembled slightly as she dug for the bullet embedded in his shoulder. Patrick's entire body tensed, but he didn't cry out, only groaning deep in his throat as she extracted the misshapen piece of lead and dropped it into a metal bowl with a clink. "One down," she murmured, wiping sweat from her brow with her forearm. "Now for your leg." Setting the broken bone proved more challenging. Zara knew it had to be done quickly, before the swelling made it impossible. She positioned herself at his feet, gripping his leg firmly. "On the count of 3, she warned. 1, she yanked sharply, realigning the bone with a sickening crack before reaching 2. This time, Patrick couldn't suppress his shout of pain. His back arched off the bed before he collapsed, unconscious once more. Zara worked methodically, cleaning and bandaging his wounds, splinting his leg properly, and finally sponging the dirt and blood from his face and torso. By the time she finished, the sun had set, casting the cabin into shadow. She lit lamps and built up the fire, then settled into a chair beside the bed to keep watch over her patient. As darkness fell completely, Zara grew increasingly anxious about her father and brother's absence. They should have returned by now. Had they encountered Russell's gang as well? The thought sent a chill through her. Patrick stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. "Water," he rasped. Zara held a cup to his lips, supporting his head as he drank greedily. "Easy," she cautioned. "Not too much at once." He sank back against the pillows, studying her face in the lamplight. "You saved my life," he said, his voice stronger now. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Zara replied, checking his forehead for fever. "You're not out of danger. The wounds could still become infected." "I've survived worse," Patrick said, grimacing as he shifted position, though not by much. "What happened out there? Who shot you?" Zara asked, adjusting the blankets over him. Patrick's expression darkened. "I was bringing a herd up from Texas, 2,000 head of longhorns. Russell and his boys hit us yesterday at dawn, killed 2 of my drovers. The others scattered with what cattle they could save." His fists clenched on the blanket. "I tried to hold them off, give my men time to escape, took 2 bullets for my trouble, and my horse threw me when a rattler spooked him. That's how I broke the leg." "How did you get to our well?" Zara asked, bewildered. "That's over a mile from the main trail. Crawled," Patrick said simply. "All night and half the day, followed the sound of water, thought I was dreaming when I saw you standing there like some kind of angel." Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks at his words. "Well, Mr. Porter, you're safe now. My father and brothers should return soon. They'll help me figure out what to do about Russell's gang." Patrick's eyes suddenly widened. "Your family's out there with Russell on the prowl." Before Zara could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew her attention. She moved to the window, peering out cautiously, then sagged with relief. "It's them," she said, hurrying to the door to greet her father and brothers. Thomas Lockhart, a grizzled veteran of the war between the states, dismounted with a scowl on his weathered face. His sons, Michael and James, looked equally grim as they unloaded supplies from their pack horses. "Zara," Thomas called, striding toward her. "Town's in an uproar. Russell's gang hit a cattle drive yesterday. Marshall's putting together a posse." "I know, Pa," Zara said, gesturing toward the cabin. "I found one of the survivors. He's inside." Thomas's hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip. "You brought a stranger into our home." "With Russell's men about, he was shot, Pa. His leg's broken. I couldn't leave him to die," Zara protested. Thomas's expression softened slightly. "Your mother's tender heart lives on in you, girl," he sighed heavily. "Show me this man." Inside, Patrick had managed to prop himself up against the headboard, his face pale but determined. He nodded respectfully as Thomas entered, followed by Michael and James. "Sir," Patrick greeted Thomas, "I apologize for imposing on your hospitality. Your daughter saved my life." Thomas studied Patrick with a critical eye. "You're the trail boss, Patrick Porter." Patrick nodded. "You know of me. Marshall Daniels mentioned you, said you brought up 3 herds from Texas last season without losing a single head. That's no small feat." Thomas pulled up a chair beside the bed. "Tell me what happened." As Patrick recounted the ambush, Thomas and his sons listened intently. When he finished, Thomas stroked his beard thoughtfully. Russell's getting bolder. This is the third attack in as many weeks. He glanced at Zara, who stood in the doorway. Girl, make up some food for our guest. He'll need his strength. While Zara prepared a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and coffee, she could hear the men discussing strategy. By the time she returned with the food, a plan was taking shape. Porter, you say your men escaped with some of the cattle? Thomas asked. Patrick nodded, accepting the plate Zara offered with a grateful smile. My foreman, Garcia, would have headed for the box canyon we scouted as a backup holding area. It's defensible with good water. If anyone made it, they'd go there. That's about 15 miles northeast of here, Thomas mused. Michael, at first light, you ride out and find Porter's men. Tell them their boss is alive. Michael, the elder of Zara's brothers at 24, nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. What about Russell? Thomas's expression hardened. James and I will join the marshal's posse. Russell's made a mistake this time. Hitting a drive this size will bring the law down hard on him. I should be with you, Patrick said, frustration evident in his voice as he gestured to his splinted leg. Those are my cattle, my men. You won't be riding anywhere for weeks, Mr. Porter, Zara interjected firmly. That leg needs time to heal, and so does your shoulder. Thomas nodded in agreement. The girl's right, you'll stay here and recover. Zara will tend to you. He fixed Patrick with a stern look. And I'll expect you to behave as a gentleman under my roof. Patrick held the older man's gaze steadily. You have my word, sir. Later that night, after her father and brothers had retired to their bunks in the loft, Zara checked on Patrick one last time. He was awake, staring at the ceiling. You should be sleeping, she chided gently, adjusting his bandages. Hard to sleep when your life's work might be scattered across half the territory, he replied grimly. Zara sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap. My pa and brothers are good men. If your cattle can be recovered, they'll help do it. Patrick turned to look at her, his blue eyes reflecting the low lamplight. Why did you help me, Miss Lockhart? You could have left me out there, would have been safer. Zara considered his question seriously. My mother taught me that we reveal our true character in how we treat those in need. She smiled slightly. Besides, I couldn't just leave you bleeding beside our well. What kind of neighbor would that make me? Neighbor? Patrick raised an eyebrow. I'm just passing through with my herd. Well, for now, you're our neighbor, Zara said firmly, standing to leave. Get some rest, Mr. Porter. Tomorrow will be soon enough to worry about your cattle. As she turned to go, Patrick caught her hand. His palm was calloused but warm against her skin. Thank you, Zara, he said softly, using her given name for the first time. Not just for the doctoring, for giving me hope when I thought I was finished. Zara felt a curious flutter in her chest at his touch and the intensity of his gaze. Good night, Mr. Porter, she managed, gently extracting her hand from his. Patrick, he corrected. After fishing a bullet out of me and setting my leg, I think you've earned the right to use my given name. A smile tugged at Zara's lips. Good night, Patrick, she conceded, blowing out the lamp as she left the room. Dawn broke clear and cold the next morning. Zara rose early to prepare breakfast before her father and brothers departed on their respective missions. Patrick was already awake when she brought him a tray of food. I'm not used to being waited on, he commented as she set the tray across his lap. Been fending for myself since I was 16. Well, for the next few weeks, you'll have to get accustomed to it, Zara replied practically, unless you plan to crawl to the table. Patrick laughed, then winced as the movement jarred his injured shoulder. You've got spirit, Zara Lockhart. I'll give you that. After breakfast, Thomas and James prepared to ride to town to join the marshal's posse, while Michael readied for his journey to find Patrick's scattered men and cattle. Zara, keep the rifle handy, Thomas instructed as he mounted his horse. Bar the doors at night. We should be back in a few days, God willing. Yes, Pa, Zara assured him, hugging each of her family members goodbye. As the sound of hoofbeats faded into the distance, Zara returned to the cabin, suddenly aware of the responsibility resting on her shoulders. She was alone with a man she barely knew, miles from the nearest neighbor, with a dangerous gang possibly still in the area. Patrick seemed to sense her unease. "You don't need to worry about me," he said when she checked his bandages mid-morning. "I'm not going to be any trouble." "I'm not worried about you," Zara admitted, adjusting his splint. "I'm worried about Russell coming here. What if they tracked you?" Patrick's expression grew serious. "Where does your father keep his weapons?" "There's my rifle, and Pa took his revolver," Zara said, frowning. "Why, my gun belt's still on me somewhere, isn't it?" Patrick asked. Zara nodded, retrieving it from the chest where she'd stored his belongings. The holster contained a well-maintained Colt revolver. Patrick checked it methodically, despite the pain the movement clearly caused him. 6 shots, he confirmed. "Keep this close, just in case." The days settled into a rhythm. Each morning, Zara would help Patrick sit up and move his good arm and leg to prevent stiffness. She changed his bandages twice daily, noting with satisfaction that his wounds were healing cleanly with no sign of infection. By the 3rd day, his fever had broken completely and color returned to his face. As Patrick regained strength, Zara found herself enjoying his company more than she'd anticipated. Unlike many men she'd encountered, he listened when she spoke and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. During the long afternoon hours, they exchanged stories she of growing up on the frontier, losing her mother to fever, helping her father establish their homestead. He of his years driving cattle up from Texas, the challenges and rewards of the open range, his dreams of someday owning land like hers. "This is good country," Patrick commented on the 4th day, sitting propped up by the window where Zara had helped him relocate for a change of scenery. "Rich grass, reliable water, a man could build something worthwhile here. Is that what you want?" Zara asked, pausing in her mending to study his profile against the sunlight. "To settle somewhere." Patrick's gaze remained fixed on the distant mountains. 10 years on the trail is enough for any man. I've saved most of what I've earned. This drive was meant to be my last, the one that would give me enough to buy a place of my own." A shadow crossed his face. "If Russell hasn't ruined everything, you'll get your cattle back," Zara said with more confidence than she felt. "Pa and the marshal will see to it." Patrick turned to look at her, his expression softening. "You're an unusual woman, Zara Lockhart. Most would be bitter living out here with all the hardship." "What good would bitterness do?" Zara replied practically. "This is the life I was given. I choose to find joy in it where I can." "And do you find joy?" Patrick asked quietly. Zara considered the question seriously. "Yes," she decided, "in the sunrise over the mountains, in a good harvest, in knowing my family is safe and fed," she smiled slightly, "in helping an injured cowboy beside a well." Patrick's answering smile made her heart beat faster. "I'm glad it was your well I collapsed beside." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Zara broke the connection first, returning to her mending with renewed focus. "You should rest," she said briskly. "Too much sitting up might strain your shoulder." Patrick allowed her to help him back to bed without protest, but his eyes followed her movements with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. On the 5th day, as Zara returned from gathering eggs, she spotted riders approaching. Her heart raced as she hurried inside to grab the rifle. "Someone's coming," she told Patrick, who immediately reached for his revolver. "How many?" he asked, his voice tense. "3, I think," Zara replied, peering through the window. "Wait, it's Michael, and he's not alone." Relief flooded through her as she recognized her brother's familiar silhouette. The other riders were strangers, but they rode openly, not like men with ill intent. Zara hurried outside as the men dismounted. Michael greeted her with a tired smile. "Found him," he announced proudly. "Hold up right where Porter said they'd be," he gestured to his companions. "This here's Garcia and Wilson, Porter's men." A weathered Mexican man in his 40s and a younger cowhand with sandy hair nodded respectfully to Zara. "Señorita," Garcia said, removing his hat, "your brother tells us our patron lives thanks to you." "He's inside," Zara confirmed, "recovering well, though he won't be riding anytime soon." Garcia and Wilson exchanged relieved glances. "We saved nearly 1,500 head," Wilson reported. "Got them secure in the canyon with the other boys standing guard." When they entered the cabin, Patrick's face lit up at the sight of his men. "Garcia, Wilson. By God, it's good to see you alive." The reunion was emotional but brief, filled with updates on the surviving cattle and men. Michael brought news of the posse as well. Pa and the marshal tracked Russell to an abandoned mine north of Devil's Canyon, he reported. They're closing in. James stayed with them, but Pa sent me back to check on you two and bring Porter's men. I should be with them, Patrick said frustratingly, gesturing to his splinted leg. Not lying here useless. Boss, with respect, you're no good to us dead, Garcia said bluntly. Your job now is to heal. We'll handle the herd until you're back on your feet. The logic was sound, but Patrick's frustration remained evident. After Garcia and Wilson departed to return to the canyon, promising to bring the herd closer to the Lockhart homestead once the danger from Russell passed, Michael took Zara aside. Pa said I should stay here with you, he said quietly. Keep watch until they return. Zara nodded, relieved to have her brother's presence yet oddly disappointed that her time alone with Patrick would end. The thought surprised her, and she pushed it aside quickly. That evening, as Michael cleaned his rifle on the porch and Zara prepared supper, Patrick called her to his bedside. I've been thinking, he began, his voice low enough that Michael wouldn't overhear. When this is over, when Russell's caught and my leg is healed, I'd like to repay your family for your kindness. That's not necessary, Zara assured him, checking his bandages. We would have done the same for anyone in need. Nonetheless, Patrick persisted. Your father and brothers are risking their lives to help recover my cattle. And you, his hand covered hers where it rested on the edge of the bed. You've been my hands, my legs, my strength when I had none left. Zara felt her pulse quicken at his touch, but kept her voice steady. It's what neighbors do. Is that all we are, neighbors? Patrick asked, his blue eyes searching hers. Before Zara could respond, Michael's voice called from outside. Riders coming, Zara, get inside. Zara rushed to the window, Patrick's question unanswered. In the fading light, she could make out 3 men approaching rapidly, none of them familiar. It's not Pa, she reported tensely, grabbing the rifle. Michael, what should we do? Her brother was already positioned at the corner of the porch, his rifle raised. Get back inside, bar the door. If they're friendly, I'll call out to you. Heart pounding, Zara retreated into the cabin, securing the door behind her. Patrick had managed to sit up, his revolver ready in his hand. Who is it? He demanded. I don't know, Zara admitted, moving to extinguish the lamps. 3 men. Not my father or James. They waited in tense silence, listening as the riders approached, and Michael's voice rang out, ordering them to identify themselves. The response was a gunshot. Chaos erupted outside. Michael fired back, and the sound of multiple guns discharging filled the air. Zara crouched by the window, rifle ready, as Patrick dragged himself to a position where he could cover the door. Lockhart, a rough voice called out. We know Porter's in there, send him out, and nobody else needs to get hurt. Russell, Patrick spat, his face twisted with anger. Zara, where's Michael? Can you see him? Zara peered through the window, her blood freezing as she spotted her brother slumped against the porch railing. He's hit, she whispered, horror washing over her. Patrick's expression hardened. They think I'm alone in here with you. They don't know your brother was here. He met her eyes steadily. I'm going out there. No, Zara protested. You can barely stand. They'll kill you. They'll kill us all if I don't, Patrick countered grimly. Help me up. Despite her objections, Zara knew he was right. With her supporting most of his weight, Patrick managed to stand, balancing precariously on his good leg. When I go out, you circle around through the back, he instructed, his arm around her shoulders as they moved toward the door. Get to Michael. If he's alive, try to get him to cover. If you get a clear shot at Russell, take it. Zara nodded, her throat tight with fear as she helped position Patrick by the door. Zara, Patrick said softly, his hand cupping her cheek. If I don't make it through this, I want you to know these days with you have meant more to me than all my years on the trail combined. Before she could respond, he pressed a swift, hard kiss to her lips, then pushed her toward the back of the cabin. Go, now. Heart racing, Zara slipped out the rear window as Patrick called out to Russell. I'm coming out. Leave the girl alone. The night air was cool against Zara's skin as she crept along the side of the cabin, rifle clutched tightly in her hands. She could hear Patrick's voice, strong despite his injuries, as he negotiated with the outlaws. "You've got me now, Russell. Let the woman go. She's got nothing to do with this." A harsh laugh responded. "The woman stays put. Insurance, you might say, in case your boys decide to make trouble." Peering around the corner of the cabin, Zara could see Patrick standing awkwardly in the doorway, using the frame for support. Russell and his two companions had dismounted, their attention fixed on Patrick. Michael lay motionless on the porch steps. Taking advantage of their distraction, Zara crept closer, using the water barrel for cover as she approached her brother. To her immense relief, she saw his chest rising and falling alive, but bleeding badly from a wound in his shoulder. "Where's the rest of your men, Russell?" Patrick was asking, keeping the outlaw's attention. "Didn't think you'd come after me with just two." Russell, a burly man with a scarred face, sneered. "Don't need more than that to finish you, Porter. Your luck's run out." Zara reached Michael, pressing her hand against his wound to slow the bleeding. His eyes fluttered open, recognition dawning as he saw her. "Gun," he whispered, nodding to his fallen rifle just beyond reach. As Zara stretched to retrieve it, a twig snapped beneath her foot. Russell's head whipped around, spotting her instantly. "Well, well," he drawled, raising his pistol. "Looks like we've got company after all. Everything happened at once." Patrick lunged forward despite his broken leg, tackling Russell with a roar of pain and rage. One of Russell's men turned to fire at Zara, but Michael, summoning his remaining strength, grabbed her rifle and shot the outlaw squarely in the chest. The third man hesitated, his gun wavering between Zara and the struggling figures of Patrick and Russell. That moment of indecision cost him dearly as a shot rang out from the darkness beyond, dropping him where he stood. "Zara," her father's voice called out, as Thomas Lockhart emerged from the shadows, his revolver still smoking. Behind him came James and three other men, the marshal's posse. On the ground, Patrick and Russell continued to grapple, both men fighting with desperate intensity. Despite his injuries, Patrick managed to pin the outlaw down, smashing his fist into Russell's face repeatedly until the man went limp. "That's for my men you killed," Patrick growled, before collapsing beside his unconscious enemy, his face contorted with pain. The aftermath was a blur of activity. Thomas and the marshal secured Russell while James helped Zara tend to Michael and Patrick. Both men had reopened their wounds in the fight, but neither was fatally injured. "You're the most stubborn, reckless man I've ever met," Zara scolded Patrick as she rebandaged his shoulder, which had begun bleeding again. "You could have been killed." Patrick, pale from pain and exertion, managed a weak smile. "Couldn't let him hurt you. Besides, I knew your father would show up eventually. Man like Thomas Lockhart wouldn't leave his children undefended for long." Thomas, overhearing as he entered the cabin, nodded approvingly. "Porter's right about that. We caught wind that Russell had split from his gang, figured he might come looking for revenge." As the marshal and his deputies departed with Russell and his surviving man in custody, and Michael was settled comfortably on a pallet near the fire, Thomas pulled Zara aside. "That cowboy risked his life for you," he observed quietly. "Broken leg and all, not many men would do that." Zara glanced toward Patrick, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion and lay sleeping. "He's a good man, Pa." Thomas studied his daughter's face thoughtfully. "Yes, I believe he is, and I think perhaps he sees something worth staying for here in Monticello." The following weeks brought healing and renewed purpose to the Lockhart homestead. Patrick's men moved the recovered cattle to pasture on Thomas's land, where they could be properly guarded until their boss recovered enough to continue the journey. Except, as the days passed and Patrick's strength returned, he showed less and less inclination to leave. His conversations with Thomas grew longer and more detailed, often revolving around cattle management, water rights, and the future of the territory. For Zara, the time was both sweet and confusing. Patrick's presence in their home had become as natural as breathing, yet she sensed changes coming that she couldn't predict. She found herself lingering over his care, treasuring the quiet moments when they were alone. 6 weeks after the showdown with Russell, Patrick finally managed to stand without assistance, though he still relied heavily on a crutch Thomas had fashioned for him. A momentous occasion, Zara teased, watching as he took his first tentative steps across the cabin floor. Next you'll be dancing. I'd need the right partner for that, Patrick replied, his gaze warm as it rested on her face. That evening, as Zara worked in the garden, Patrick made his way slowly out to join her, lowering himself carefully onto a bench Thomas had placed there. Your father and I had a long talk today, he began, watching as she gathered the last of the summer vegetables. Oh, Zara tried to sound casual, though her heart had begun to race. I made him an offer, Patrick continued, for the north section of his land, the part that borders the creek. Zara's hands stilled in their task. You're staying in Monticello, Patrick nodded, if that's agreeable to the locals. His eyes never left her face, particularly one local in particular. Zara stood, brushing soil from her skirt as she moved to sit beside him on the bench, the drive to Kansas. Your men, Garcia will take the herd on to Abilene, Patrick explained. He's more than capable, the men will get their shares, same as always. I'll use my portion to start building here. He paused, uncertainty flickering across his features. Unless you think that's a mistake. Zara considered his words carefully. Why here, why now? You've spent your life on the move. Patrick reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle as they entwined with hers. Because for the first time in my life, I found something worth stopping for. Someone who made me realize that all the cattle and all the trails in the world don't mean a thing if you've got nobody to come home to at day's end. Zara's breath caught in her throat. Patrick, I love you, Zara Lockhart, he said simply, the words hanging in the evening air between them. I think I started falling for you the moment you found me half dead by your well. You became my strength when I had none left. You gave me a reason to fight, to heal, to want more than just surviving. Tears welled in Zara's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. I love you too, she whispered, the truth of it washing over her like a cleansing rain. I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself. Afraid of what? Patrick asked gently, his free hand rising to brush a strand of hair from her face. That you'd leave once you healed, Zara admitted. That this whatever was growing between us was just gratitude or convenience. Patrick shook his head firmly. What I feel for you goes bone deep, Zara. It's the kind of love men search a lifetime for and rarely find. His expression grew solemn. I spoke to your father not just about the land. I asked for his blessing to court you properly, with your permission, of course. Zara's heart soared at his words. And what did Pa say? A slow smile spread across Patrick's face. He said if I was fool enough to try to keep up with a woman like you, I deserved whatever came my way. Laughter bubbled up from Zara's chest, bright and joyous. That sounds like Pa. He also said, Patrick continued, his voice softening, that he hadn't seen you this happy since before your mother passed, and that alone made me acceptable in his eyes. The setting sun cast long shadows across the garden as Zara leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their kiss was tender, a promise exchanged without words as the day faded into twilight. By the following spring, Patrick's leg had healed completely, though he still walked with a slight limp that would likely remain with him always. The cabin he built on the north section of Lockhart land stood sturdy against the Wyoming winds, a testament to his determination and the helping hands of neighbors who had come to respect the former trail boss. The wedding took place on a bright May morning, with wildflowers carpeting the prairie and the mountains standing sentinel in the distance. Zara wore her mother's dress, carefully altered with a crown of spring blossoms in her hair. Patrick, standing straight and proud beside Thomas, watched with undisguised adoration as she walked toward him. You're still the most beautiful sight I've ever seen, he whispered as she reached his side. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, witnessed by the Lockhart family, Patrick's cattle crew who had ridden in for the occasion, and the townsfolk of Monticello who had embraced the couple's story as their own. Garcia, serving as Patrick's best man, presented them with a gift from the trail hands, a fine Morgan mare, her coat gleaming in the sunlight. For the Senora, he explained with a bow to Zara, so she can keep up with her cowboy husband. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with music and dancing beneath the stars. As Patrick led Zara in a somewhat uneven but enthusiastic dance, he pulled her close, his breath warm against her ear. "Not bad for a man who couldn't stand on his own 6 months ago," he murmured. Zara smiled up at him, her heart overflowing with happiness. "I always knew you had it in you, from the moment I found you by that well." "That well changed everything," Patrick agreed, spinning her carefully. "I fell twice that day, once from my horse and once for you." Later, as they stood on the porch of their new home, watching the last of their guests depart, Patrick wrapped his arms around Zara from behind, resting his chin on the top of her head. "You know what today is?" he asked quietly. Zara leaned back against his solid warmth. "Our wedding day." "Besides that," Patrick clarified, "it's exactly 1 year since you found me bleeding out beside your family's well." Zara turned in his embrace, her hands coming to rest against his chest. "From the brink of death to the beginning of a new life, it's quite a journey we've had, Patrick Porter." "And it's only just beginning," he promised, lowering his mouth to hers as the stars emerged overhead. Witnesses to a love born from compassion and strengthened through adversity, a love that would endure, like the land they now shared, for all the seasons to come. 5 years later, the Porter Ranch had grown prosperous under Patrick's careful management and Zara's unwavering support. Their herd of cattle, crossbred from Texas Longhorns and hardier northern stock, was among the finest in the territory. The modest cabin had expanded into a proper ranch house, with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. On that porch, Zara sat in a rocking chair, watching as Patrick taught their 4-year-old son, Thomas, named for his grandfather, how to throw a lasso. Their 2-year-old daughter, Emma, played contentedly at Zara's feet with carved wooden animals Patrick had made during the long winter evenings. The sound of approaching horses drew Zara's attention. She smiled as she recognized Michael and his wife, Sarah, riding toward the house with their own young son. Behind them came James, still unmarried but courting a schoolteacher from town. "Look who's coming, Patrick," she called, lifting Emma into her arms as she stood. Patrick turned, shielding his eyes against the afternoon sun. His face, tanned and weathered from years working outdoors, broke into a wide smile at the sight of his brothers-in-law. "Perfect timing," he declared, scooping up Thomas. "I just finished mending the fence line at the north pasture. We deserve some family time." As the Lockharts dismounted and greetings were exchanged, Zara felt a familiar swell of gratitude. Their life wasn't without challenges. Drought, harsh winters, and the occasional rustler had all tested their resolve, but the foundation they had built together remained unshaken. Later, as the men discussed the coming roundup and the women prepared dinner, little Thomas tugged at his father's sleeve. "Papa, tell the story about the well again," he pleaded, his blue eyes so like Patrick's wide with anticipation. Patrick lifted his son onto his lap, exchanging a tender glance with Zara across the room. "Well, son, it was a hot summer day, and your papa had gotten himself into a mighty bad situation." As Patrick recounted the tale, somewhat edited for young ears, Zara watched the faces of her family, illuminated by the golden light of evening. Each one of them was a blessing, a testament to the unexpected ways love could transform lives. When their guests had departed and the children were tucked into bed, Zara and Patrick stood together on the porch, watching as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the Wyoming sky. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me that day?" Patrick asked, his arm secure around her waist. Zara considered the question, leaning into his embrace. "I believe we were meant to find each other," she said finally. "If not by that well, then somewhere else. Some paths are written in the stars." Patrick's laugh was low and warm. "My practical wife, talking of destiny, you've changed, Zara Porter." "We've both changed," she countered, turning to face him. "For the better, I think." In the soft light spilling from the windows of their home, Patrick studied her face, still as beautiful to him as it had been on that fateful day, though now marked with fine lines that spoke of both laughter and worry. "I love you more today than yesterday," he said quietly, a declaration he had made every evening since their wedding. "And I'll love you even more tomorrow." "And I you," Zara replied, completing their ritual as she rose on tiptoe to meet his kiss. Above them, the vast Wyoming sky spread like a blanket of velvet, studded with diamonds. Below, the land they had nurtured together stretched in all directions, a testament to what could be built when two people found in each other the strength to overcome adversity, to heal, and to love without reservation. For Patrick and Zara Porter, the well where they first met had become more than a source of water. It had become the wellspring of a life filled with purpose, family, and enduring love. A life neither could have imagined before that summer day when fate brought a wounded cowboy and a determined young woman together, forever changing the course of both their destinies.